Welcome. This video is about midpoints and distances. This first one asks us, what are the coordinates for the midpoint of the line segment shown at the right? When you have a graph of it like this on a coordinate plane and they're pretty close together, sometimes it's just kind of intuitive. So I'm going to take more of the graphing intuitive approach because there's going to be another one where we're going to look at the coordinates, and we'll do it from that way as well. So you can use both approaches, but this one, I think, like I said, is kind of intuitive. So here I'm going to say this vertical distance goes 3 down to the x-axis, and then it goes down an additional 5, and so this total distance here is 8. This distance is 2 units here, and so if I took half of 8, that's 4. So if I just go either up 1, 2, 3, 4, or down 1, 2, 3, 4, I get to that point here. If I take half of 2, half of 2 is 1, and so if I go over 1 from either side, I can see that right here is the place where those come together. And then I can just read it from the graph. And it's back 1 from the y-axis, and it's down 1 from the x-axis, and so it's -1, -1. Now, in this next one, it's asking about the distance between the two endpoints for the line segment shown. And the distance formula comes from the Pythagorean theorem. If I draw a line here that connects to the same level as the other point and a line here, then you can see that they form kind of a right angle, a right triangle. And then it would just be, if this distance was A and this distance was B and this distance would be C, then you'd have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And so the distance formula comes from that idea. So the distance formula is D equals the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Again, there's a kind of an intuitive way of looking at this. This distance we can see without taking that subtraction, that this is 4. That's that difference in the y coordinates. That this distance you can just count is 4 and then back 5, and so that's 9. And so then you just have the distance is equal to the square root of 9 squared plus 4 squared. And 9 squared is 81, and 9 squared is 81, 4 squared is 16, and so that would be 97. And so the distance is the square root of 97. And so depending on what your teacher has asked, you can leave your answers square root of 97. Perhaps see if you can simplify it. I don't think it can be. The square root then of 97, or if you want a decimal, you could say that it's approximately 9.85. So approximately 9.85. And this might be the answer here, or this might be the answer, depending on whether they want the exact value or an approximation. All right, let's move on. This next one was one that I said we're going to do this with the coordinates. So basically the midpoint is the average of the coordinates. So pretty straightforward here. I take, here's my x sub 1 and my y sub 1. Here's my x sub 2 and my y sub 2. And so I just take the average, -3 plus 7, and then divide by 2 for the x's. This is for the x coordinates. And then I would do -5 and 1. I'm going to do the same thing over here for y. Well, negative 3 plus 7 is 4. Divide by 2 is 2. And over here I've got 1 plus negative 5 over 2. Again, it's the average. Since you're adding two numbers, you have to divide by 2. So negative 1 plus positive 1 plus negative 5 would be negative 4. Divide by 2 would be negative 2. And so your midpoint would just be 2 comma negative 2. And if you were to graph those, even just a quick sketch, you could see that midpoint does fall in halfway in between those 2 points. Okay, so here once more, what is the distance between the points negative 2, 5, and 10, 40? So I'm going to say the distance is equal to negative 2 minus 10 squared plus 5 minus 40 squared. And really, literally, you could just put this in your calculator and get a decimal value. If you want to do it by hand, still might want to use your calculator depending on where your arithmetic skills are. Negative 12 squared plus negative 35 squared. And negative 12 squared I know is 144. But 35 squared I don't have memorized, so let's plug that in. 35 squared. So that's 1225. Notice that it's negative 35, but a negative 35 times a negative 35 is positive, so it eliminates the negative. What did I say it was? 1,225. If I add those two together, then I get 1,369. And the square root of 1,369 is 1,369, 37. So the distance between those 2 points would be 37 units. All right. Hey, you got this. Study hard. Keep going. You can do this.